Channel 8 News crews have been monitoring the situation since it began outside the Branch Davidian compound near Waco. Robert Riggs joins us now with the latest. Robert.
Renee, the standoff continues. It's been 22.5 hours since Sunday's bloody siege that left 4 federal alcohol, tobacco, firearms agents dead and 15 wounded. There is no sign of activity inside the Mount Carmel compound, where the religious cult is holding off literally an army of police officers, federal, state, and local. They live inside a heavily fortified complex. They are believed to have homemade bombs and powerful machine guns that they outgunned the federal agents with yesterday. The complex contains 2-story barrack-style buildings, and it's overshadowed by 2 towers, watchtowers, that are 3 and 4 stories tall. I understand snipers from the federal agents knocked out some of the cult's gunmen that were manning those towers yesterday. We have not heard this morning from the fanatical leader of the Branch Davidians or his 70 followers. 33-year-old David Koresh, in a radio interview last night, said that after reading his apocalyptic message from the book of Revelations, he would start releasing children that are inside the compound. It's believed that 8 children have been released. We're not certain as to how many children are inside. 2 of the children that were released were toddlers. There have been news reports that Koresh has a harem of 15 wives, and that there have been charges that he was having sex with underage women inside the cult. Throughout the night, Channel 8's Dave Evans has been here and has this report.
At daybreak here, it is quiet at the compound, but negotiations reportedly continue by phone between ATF agents and the leader of the Branch Davidians, David Koresh. Overnight, law enforcement officials from across the Southwest brought in more firepower, including a half-dozen Bradley fighting vehicles, a bomb squad, and dozens of new police and federal agents to replace those who've worked here almost 24 hours. At about 3 in the morning, the Branch Davidians released 2 more children, bringing the total to at least 6 turned over to authorities. This after a Dallas radio station released a statement from Koresh.
They don't stop and think. They don't stop and listen. Sometimes a crisis has to happen so the people can stop and say, hey, really, what's going on?
Earlier on Sunday night, it was an emotional ATF agent from Dallas, Ted Royster, who told reporters of the loss, 4 agents dead and 14 injured.
Our hearts go out to these brave agents who died today in the line of duty, and to their families.
At the compound this morning, there are several injured, at least 2 or perhaps 3 Branch Davidians dead, and up to 20 children locked inside. At this point, the negotiations continue, all in the hope that it can somehow end peacefully. Dave Evans, Channel 8 News, near Waco.
Armored personnel carriers belonging to the Texas National Guard have been brought to the scene. There are more powerful units off scene being prepared. We are now waiting for the next move. Hospital emergency rooms are preparing for the worst, and calls have gone out for blood donors. Renee?
All right, thanks a lot, Robert. And we, of course, will continue to check in with you throughout the morning.
This is News 8 Midday.
The main problem we had, I don't believe, is that we were outmaneuvered or outplanned. The problem we had is that we were outgunned.
Federal agents respond to yesterday's shootout as the standoff with the religious cult leader and his followers continues near Waco. Good afternoon. The latest on that story tops our news at noon.
6 people died yesterday, 4 of them agents of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Law officers tried to execute a search for illegal weapons, but more than 26 hours after the initial gunfight began at the Mount Carmel religious compound 10 miles from Waco, cult leader David Koresh shows no signs of giving up. Channel 8's Robert Riggs is at the compound post with the latest. Robert?
Renee, the standoff continues between a fanatical religious sect called the Branch Davidians and with hundreds of law enforcement officers. We're now entering the 26th hour of a deadly siege. Off in the distance, through the mist and haze, you can see the compound called Mount Carmel. It's heavily fortified. They have homemade bombs inside, machine guns. There are approximately 70 followers of the radical sect inside. Phone negotiations continued through this morning with cult leader David Koresh. They have stayed open through the morning and also through the night. Last night, he released 6 children that were inside the compound. It's unclear how many children may still be inside. appealed to a Dallas radio station, KRLD, to run his messages quoting apocalyptic scripture from Revelations, and in return he released those children after 2 deadly shootouts on Sunday. Law enforcement officers involved in the raid complained to Channel 8 privately that top-level officials in Washington at the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms Agency rejected their request to use armored personnel carriers for the assault. SWAT teams ran into a hail of heavy gunfire when they entered the Mount Carmel compound. A lengthy investigation into gun charges led to the raid, but it was apparently the worst-kept local secret. Sources say the cult may have received a warning call a half-hour before the raid. SWAT teams rode inside 2 gooseneck cattle trailers covered with tarps and pulled by pickup trucks. Large-caliber machine gun rounds fired through walls from inside the buildings dropped some officers before they could get out of the trucks. ATF agents complained they were not armed with fully automatic weapons and did not have stun grenades. Today, the compound is surrounded by hundreds of officers. Agents wearing camouflage gear rotated shifts at mid-morning, while heads of their law enforcement agencies, dozens of agencies, plotted strategy. An ATF spokeswoman defends the attack, saying it was planned to save the most lives.
Yeah, they had bigger firearms than we had. They were able to shoot through doors, and due to that, you know, a lot of our agents were hurt.
Those agents that were involved in the firefight are described as being very emotional. Other agents have come in from around the country who have been involved in shootings to counsel them. Channel 8's Sonia Van Sickle is standing by live where she's been attending that ATF briefing. Sonia.
Well, Robert, as you say, the press briefing was very brief this morning. The negotiations are ongoing and have been all night long, and this morning between law enforcement agents and cult members. There have been no real changes, though, other than, as you mentioned, 2 more children were released around midnight, bringing the total of those released from the compound to 6. We hear there were some shots fired, they believe, around 1 or 1:30 this morning, apparently from the compound, but since that time, all has been quiet. Now, during the briefing, Public Information Officer Sharon Wheeler told news media that the heads of all law enforcement agencies have been in a meeting all morning. Now, they are planning today's strategy and the strategy of subsequent days should that be necessary and should this continue. She says right now, members of a special peer support system are meeting with the ATF agents from yesterday's gun battle.
In that program, these peer support people come in, they sit and they talk with the agents, they let these agents hear about the experiences they've had, they let the agents know that they're not alone, and let them be able to vent those feelings, because right now a lot of those agents that were involved in this shootout yesterday are very torn up and very emotional, which is understandable.
Now, Wheeler says the agents who are online now were brought in from other areas to take over. As for the children released overnight, Wheeler only said that they appeared in good shape. They looked to be about 2 years old and another 6 years old. She would not comment on whether or not they appeared afraid. They are in custody of Child Protective Services. The next press briefing here is scheduled for 3:30. I'm Sonia Van Sickle reporting live from Waco. Robert, back to you.
Sonia, in talking to law enforcement sources, they say this is a massive logistics headache, just trying to work out using the same radio frequencies between dozens of police agencies that are here, and it's unclear how long the standoff may last. In Wyoming and Colorado, for example, standoffs with similar radical sects have lasted up to 3 weeks as they waited it out. There's been a mobilization of military and other police resources which started overnight. Channel 8's Dave Evans has that report.
It was just after midnight when Branch Davidians released 2 more children, toddlers, bringing the total to 6, all in good physical condition. Let go since the siege began early Sunday morning. The release came after a Dallas radio station played a statement on air from the cult's wounded leader, David Koresh.
My Father, my God, who sits on the throne in heaven, has given me a book of 7 seals.
Look, if they're going to kill us, they're going to kill us, aren't they?
They said they wouldn't.
We want to be able to present our doctrine. Look, we want to teach the 7 seals.
While negotiations between Koresh and ATF agents continued on an open phone line, dozens of police and federal agents streamed in overnight. At least 6 Bradley fighting vehicles, bomb squad units, and SWAT teams to help in a possible assault here. Now, more than 200 officers surround Koresh and at least 80 of his followers. Inside the compound, at least 2 Branch Davidians are dead and an unknown number injured. According to an ATF agent in Washington, negotiations at this point are difficult because Koresh and his top followers continue to ramble on that open phone line for hours quoting the Bible. Still, that agent says he continues to hope it can all end without further violence. Dave Evans, Channel 8 News, near Waco.
Negotiations continue with David Koresh, the man who has told his followers that he has the biblical secret to when the world will come to an end. Thus far, overnight, he has released 6 children. And we have reports that his mother, who lives in Tyler, is on her way here to help in negotiations. This is Robert Riggs live reporting from outside Waco.
All right, Robert, thanks very much. Now, again, the death toll in yesterday's gun battle stands at 6 people dead. Waco, the standoff continues.
Negotiators are still attempting to persuade David Koresh and his followers to surrender.
They remain inside their heavily armed compound about 10 miles from Waco. Channel 8's Robert Riggs is at the police command post and joins us with a recap of what's happened.
When this morning, federal authorities said that phone lines and phone negotiations remained open through the night and this morning with David Koresh and his religious cult. Approximately 70 of his cult followers are held up in a heavily fortified compound called Mount Carmel. And off in the distance here, through the heavy rain, you can see a command post where federal authorities, there are approximately 100 agents around this compound, are monitoring the activities inside it. From our vantage point, we have seen no sign of activity, no movement in there. They have blackout curtains over the windows. Overnight, there were 6 children released from the compound after a radio station broadcast messages from the cult leader. ATF sources who were involved in the raid tell Channel 8 News that they are disgusted and very unhappy the way the raid was conducted, that they had asked for armored personnel carriers, but that the whole operation was micromanaged from Washington, and they were denied that request. In defense, a spokesperson for ATF out of Dallas said this morning that they tried to plan to save as many lives as possible inside. We'll have continuing updates through the day. I'm Robert Riggs live from Waco. Yes, got a question there?
Robert, one question. Tell us more about the armored personnel carriers. Are those being moved in today?
Last night, Fort Hood began moving approximately 10 Bradley fighting vehicles owned by the Texas National Guard into this area. These are fighting vehicles that you may remember from Operation Desert Storm. They're heavily armored. They carry approximately 6 crew persons inside. They have a 25mm cannon, which is extremely powerful. However, you do have a problem of getting everyone trained under federal law. The military cannot go in on a civilian police operation. I believe they can drive the vehicles but can't operate the guns. So it's still in question what will be done in that regard. We are told that at this hour the leaders of dozens of police agencies are plotting strategy. Quinn?
All right, obviously quite a bit more to watch for. Thanks very much, Robert.